George Bush was President of the United States. The Democrats were still in power in Congress, and yours truly had a whole lot more hair on his head. What started out as a simple one-tape compilation of my trips to England in 1991 has turned into a 6-hour mini-series after another 2-week excursion to England in 1993. Gatwick Airport is one of those European inventions with a mainline railway station as part of the complex. This part of England uses third rail electric, and most of the trains are electric multiple units running off of the 650 volt third rail power. The train we will be using from Gatwick Airport to London's Victoria Station, however, is locomotive hauled, or pushed, as the case may be. The Gatwick Express runs non-stop between Gatwick Airport and London Victoria Station. After our arrival by rail into London, we met up at the hotel, which is attached directly to Gatwick Station, the Grosvenor Victoria. Then we, after all gathered, we took a bus tour of London, seeing some of the sights, such as the double-deck buses, the diesel cabbies, and some of the various sights. Tea at the Ritz? Well, no, I didn't have tea at the Ritz. But we did go across London Bridge and saw and rode across Tower Bridge, which most people think of as London Bridge, but is really not London Bridge. One of our reasons for doing this little bus tour was to get up to King's Cross Station, which was our jumping off point for York and our first 3 nights stay in England. This is King's Cross, home of the East Coast Main Line and the fastest trains that do operate in England, the IC 225, which is capable and regularly does 140 miles per hour. We were to ride the Teens Tyne Pullman, kind of a holdover from some of the very ritzy trains that used to run in England. Once we arrived in York, we were greeted by the local brass band. I don't think it was just for us, but they were there anyway. The next morning, and it's British Rail's York passenger station. Classic old station, dates from the 1800s, and the hotel next to it, the Royal York, was our home for 3 nights. At this time it was undergoing quite a restoration, so much scaffolding evident, and some of the rooms probably needed a little work. One of, as Bob Bridger calls it, the hotels with character in England. Each morning we would get up and have a very nice buffet breakfast, and in the evening we partook in the dining room of a very nice meal. York has a lovely curved train shed. This train is an up train, as all trains in England are, I believe, called up trains when they go towards London. This one's coming from Edinburgh and is one of the IC 225, called such for 225 kilometers. We've got to be metric in England now, too. This train probably has the distinction of being the world's fastest push-pull train. Now, I'm not certain of that, but if you can imagine being pushed from Edinburgh by an electric locomotive at 140 miles per hour, it boggles the mind. Secondary services in England are provided by a host of different classes of diesel multiple units and electric multiple units, also known as DMUs and EMUs. This DMU is a Class 141, which is headed for Sheffield, as another IC 225 arrives in York. The Class 91 locomotive, or actually electric motors that power these trains, have a continuous power rating of 6,300 horsepower. Plenty of get up and go. The high-speed diesel counterpart, the IC 125, meaning 125 miles per hour this time, are pulled and pushed by a pair of Class 43 diesel electric units, each with 2,250 horsepower. Here's a Class 158 DMU, one of the, at this time, probably the newest class of diesel multiple units, having just been built in 1991. And a Class 156 heading towards Scarborough. This is a Class 142 set. I believe built by British Leland, the truck people. And this one's coming from Scarborough and terminating here at York. The conventional locomotive-hauled diesel passenger trains are getting fewer and fewer. This is a Class 47, which is probably the most common diesel still being used. A picture of Jack taking a picture of me. This is required.
That's right.
Very good.
This is the interior of the first-class coach in the IC 225 coaching stock. We're on our way north to Newcastle, and from Newcastle west to Carlisle, and from Carlisle south on the Settle and Carlisle route back down towards York. Here's an IC 125 with an up train towards London, leaving Newcastle. What I believe to be a Class 153 diesel multiple unit. And a Class 143. One of the very few freight trains that I was able to video while I was in England during the entire 1 month period. A Class 37, 1750 horsepower English electric Type 3 with a maximum speed of approximately 80 miles per hour. We're now on a diesel multiple unit train heading westbound towards Carlisle. The conductor was kind enough to let me sit in the rear driver's compartment to get a few videos. Now we've arrived at Carlisle, and one of the probably the oldest class of diesel multiple unit trains that we rode. This one having been built in the early 1950s. I believe it's a Class 101, but don't quote me on that. It was fairly rare. We spotted a number of train spotters taking photographs of it as we headed down the Settle and Carlisle through the moors. This line was threatened with extinction in cutbacks. It is a secondary line, but it is extremely beautiful and probably is fairly safe now as more and more people are riding it as tourists and just for the beauty of it.
Well, is that part of Yorkshire Dales up there? Okay. That's right, we're too far away. Unless there's just some kind of
Here's our first glimpse of the some 30 to 35 operating steam locomotives you'll see in this series. The next day, day 2 in York, and a trip to ride the North Yorkshire Moors Railway from Pickering north to Gromont, spelled Grossmont. Oh, well. This line was designed by the great George Stephenson as a horse railway in 1831. It was finished in 1836. What's approaching now is number 8135, a British standard tank of a 264T type, also known as the BR-4MT. was built in 1956 in Brighton. Has 68-inch diameter drivers and uses 225 pound per square inch boiler pressure. When this railway was first built, the worst grade was conquered by use of a rope-hauled incline. After numerous serious accidents, the line was relocated, and in 1865 the incline was abandoned. The line from Pickering to Gromont is almost 18 miles, making it one of the longer excursion railways in England. Here, the 210 number 3672, also known as the Dame Vera Lynn, reverses into Gothland. The railway has no turning facilities at the end, so half the time the locomotives are running in reverse. The Dame Vera Lynn was built in 1943 and has drivers which are 4 foot 8.5 inches in diameter. Amazingly enough, just the width of the rail line. Number 6619 is an 062 tank of Great Western design built in Swindon in 1928. Gothland is at the summit of the railway line. This is kind of a bucolic scene. We have automatic lawnmowers here, which seem to do an excellent job of keeping things neat and clean. Also, typical country gardens in the well kept homesteads. The depot is a relative newcomer to the railway, which was built in 1865 when the line was relocated after the removal of the incline. This was a special day on the railway, sponsored by one of the large publishing companies that does railway work, and it was called the Railway World Day. And they ran a number of special trains, including this freight train hauled by the 210 Dame Vera Lynn. You may have noticed the WD on the side of the tender. That stands for the War Department, as these locomotives were actually built for the War Department and during the World War II. There's a number of these 210Os around, and you'll see some other ones later in the series. Signaling is handled in the traditional way with working signal boxes. And here you'll see how one used to hook up freight cars in England with an adjustable link. Notice it has a wide area and a narrow area. Here he goes. Complete with the vacuum brakes that he's now hooking up. Some young ladies in period costume. Back on the platform, the young ladies are waiting for the arrival of the 257 Squadron, a 462 Bullied Pacific built in 1948 for the Southern Railway. Let's get the signals ready for the arrival of another train from Pickering. And the time-honored exchanging of the token, which allows single railway line working in Britain and elsewhere in the world. This is what they have to have in their possession in order to be able to go on the single-track line.
Oh, it's another one. That's another one.
Let's head up towards Gromont. Upon our arrival at Gromont, we see the number 54, a Sentinel 4WT geared locomotive. 24 of these were built from 1925 to 1933, and this one is from 1933. It weighs 19.8 tons. The depot at Gromont dates from 1845 and the coming of the steam locomotives to this part of the country. Well, as our standard tank leaves for Pickering from Gromont, we'll have to say goodbye to the North Yorkshire Moors. Someday I'd like to return here. It's an extremely scenic and well-run operation. The next day, an IC-125 leaves York, bound for London, probably. they certainly are distinctive sound to those things. Here's one of the Class 8 shunters, or the switch engines as we in the States tend to call them. Probably the most common shunter still out there. Little steam engine design there, don't you think? This is a Class 47 leaving Manchester Piccadilly Station. We're on our way over to Chester now, and we have to stop here and change trains in Manchester. Take a look at a few of the sights to be seen. This is the kind of the West Coast main line, the one that heads up to Glasgow from London. Their electric-powered trains aren't nearly as fast as the ones on the East Coast. Here's our DMU set for the trip up to Chester. The Queen Hotel in Chester, England. Right across from the train station again. Some of the scenery around the area, including the double-decker buses. It's kind of a panoramic shot of the train sheds at Chester, and of two Class 20 locomotives on the morning ballast train. I'm not sure, but it always looked the same every morning I saw it. The Class 20s were built from 1957 to 1968 by the English Electric Company. They're 1,000 horsepower at 850 RPM and have a top speed of 60 miles an hour. Here comes our Class 47 powered train on its way out to Holyhead. We're only going as far as Llandudno Junction. Sounds like Wales. The Class 47 has a top speed of anywhere up to 95 miles per hour and are powered by a Sulzer diesel of 2,850 horsepower. They were built by the Brush Company. Our journey today takes us along the Irish Sea on our way to Llandudno Junction and then up to Blaenau Festiniog. And I'm probably murdering that name. We've now changed to a set of elderly DMUs for the trip up to Blaenau Festiniog. This is the beginning or the ending point, depending on how you look at it, of the famous Festiniog slate mining railway, a 2-foot gauge railway, which we'll be riding, sort of looked upon as the Silverton Railway of England. Now, those of you who've never heard of the Silverton, I pity you. You should go ride it. It's down at Durango, Colorado to Silverton. This line is fairly heavily used by the locals. This was a very full train when we started out. It thinned out towards the end. Hope you noticed the sound of the gear changes on these lovely little DMUs. This is the reason the railway came up here, for slate. And the reason that the Festiniog Railway came to this area, to haul slate down to the Irish Sea. And there's our Festiniog train. It's downhill all the way from here to the coast, so there won't be a whole lot of steam-type noises, but it's very scenic. Also very narrow coaches.
It even owns a camera. Like oh, sure, you can already see other parts that are closed down. The slate
The ride takes us 13.5 miles down the 1-foot, 11.5-inch gauge. No, not 2-foot. Behind one of these Farley-type locomotives. Farleys are essentially 2 steam locomotives on one frame. They have 2 of them in service, one from 1879 and one from 1979, both built by the Festiniog. We departed the train at Minford, quaint little depot, and the exchange route, or the station, to catch the standard gauge British rail tracks. There's Mr. Jack Whitmire showing us how narrow the narrow gauge really can get. Here's our Class 150 DMUs for our trip along the Welsh coast. Again, the Irish Sea.
Get that good enough?
At Macclesfield, boy, I can't pronounce those names, we changed to, that's how it looks anyway. We stopped in the middle of basically nowhere to change to another DMU set to head back to the town of Shrewsbury. And here we are at Shrewsbury, which has probably the largest interlocking tower in Great Britain. It's huge. It has 100 and some levers in it. Very complicated track layout here. This is a Class 147 who's with a down train from London, coming just as far here as Shrewsbury. Okay, I'm a sucker for these old DMUs. Now the Class 47 is run around its train and hooked onto the back driving trailer and is heading back with an up train back to London. Next will be a rare Class 31 engine running light through the station. These are built from 1957 to 62 by Brush Traction and have 1100 horsepower English electric diesel locomotives in them. A couple of Class 87s, electric locomotives built by BREL in 1973 to 75, rated at 5,000 horsepower. Couple of Class 20s on, I think at this time, the only Class 20 hauled passenger train in England. We came here, however, to ride the Welsh Coast Express behind some steam. The London and Northeastern Railways Class V2, number 4771, the Green Arrow, built in 1936 by Doncaster Works to a Gresley design. 74-inch drivers, 184 of these were built. Since the concept of run-bys doesn't seem to exist in England, I stayed at Llandudno Junction, remember that name, while the train headed off to Llandudno to get some servicing done. He'll come back, so no problem. We also used some interesting regular trains in order to chase the train on the way back from its final destination. While here at Llandudno Junction, take a few pictures of trains before the steamer comes back. Well, he did come back, and one of the interesting things about this particular location in Llandudno Junction is we actually go underneath a castle on the mainline railway to Holyhead. Well, here we are out at Holyhead. And why are we at Holyhead? Well, that's the end of the line unless you want to get your feet wet. Or take one of these ferries across to the Emerald Isle. As I mentioned, we're not going to ride the steam train back to Crewe or Chester. We're going to use the regular services, the intercity services and locals, and we'll take a picture of it leaving Holyhead and then catch up with it a couple of times. zip ahead to the city of Rhyl, R-H-Y-L. Well, the next 8 evenings will be spent out of London and staying at the Grosvenor Victoria right next to Victoria Station. There we are, the Grosvenor. Another classic old hotel with some character. Staying at a place like this is not cheap in London. Victoria Station. The Victoria Station is actually 2 stations that were next to each other that have been combined. Also, with the transportation system in Europe, the intelligent transportation system, not only does the Victoria bus station located here, the train station, and the underground, I believe 2 different lines on the underground go out of there. The Southern Railway had half the station here, and the other belonged to the London, Brighton, and South Coast Railway, this portion of the station. And there's the Grosvenor on the corner, right next to it. At this time, they were repairing the station and doing some new work. It was finished in 1993, but at this time, they were still crashing around there with it. A busy place, even midday, which this was. Now we're down south here, and we're heading on our little side trip to Hythe to ride the Romney Hyth and Dymchurch Railway. Here we are in Hythe, which is the west end of a very famous narrow gauge railway. I mean really narrow gauge. 15-inch gauge, 13.5 miles long. The engine we're going to use for the first part of our trip is diesel number 14, which was built by TMA of Buckingham, I believe, in 1989. A regular small miniature railway. Everything is like the big boys, most of it double track, at least 2/3 of the way. Quite heavily used. In fact, it's used as the local school bus. Here we're arriving in New Romney, which is the headquarters, the shops, the main station, and where all the action is. Number 7 is the Typhoon, built in 1926 by Davy Paxman. The line is single track between New Romney and Dungeness Lighthouse. Here a train coming back from Dungeness. There's a Typhoon heading out for Hythe. This is number 5, the Hercules, built in 1926 also. This is a 482. Typhoon's a 462. Again, built by Davy Paxman. Here comes the Southern Maid from Hythe. Now we're heading out to Dungeness. This line is, as I said, single track. There's a loop at the end so the train can turn around. And they do a little bit of servicing at the end while you can walk around a bit. And here we are heading back. We then journeyed by bus to Rolkstone Harbor to view a steam special recreating the boat trains leaving Rolkstone Harbor in days gone by. The power was a rebuilt Bullied Pacific and a standard BR 462 tank engine as a banker. Next day, and back in London, this is St. Pancras Station, right next to King's Cross. Stately old station. At one time, the station head house there included a hotel. Right now, it's entirely vacant except for the railway booking office, and a number of trains to the center portion of England leave from this station every day, all diesel hauled, and mostly the IC 125s, which seem to be everywhere in England. This was built in the 1867, the shed was, and as I say, it's still in use today. We journeyed up the East Coast Main Line from the next door station, King's Cross, to Peterborough to ride the Nene Valley Railway. This locomotive that coming in here was a type that we'd soon learn to appreciate as a plain looker but a loud talker, a Huslett 060 tank engine. In this case, this particular one was built in 1943. The Nene Valley Railway, which is an ex-London and North Western line, is 7.5 miles long, standard gauge, and with larger clearances than most railways in England, it can accommodate continental engines such as those from Denmark, France, and Germany. There's even a U.S. diesel Alco switcher at Peterborough. Here we're arriving at Wattsford, which is where the shops are, and we here view a steam crane in operation. East of Wattsford, there is a small portion of the line that is still operable, but it just goes out and comes back. So I stayed around the shops area and did a little touring. We then journeyed cross-country to the Great Central Railway at Loughborough. This railway is 8.5 miles long, and it was one of their open days again. We rode behind I can't remember the number anyway, but it's a Merchant Navy class 462, the Canadian Pacific Lines, built in 1941 and rebuilt in 1959. We also saw here at this station, which is Rothley, a passing train. With a Jubilee Class 460, built in 1934. At the far end of the line, we catch up with a double header with 440 Schools Class Repton, built for the Southern in 1934, and 440 Butler Henderson, built for the Great Central Railway in 1919. The Repton actually journeyed to the United States for a while and was part of the Steamtown collection. Then it came back to England, where it was found to be too light to work on some of the other railways, and found a home on the Great Central. I was lucky enough to be invited to take a little cab ride, in reverse of course, to the next station down the line. Next we head back to the main British rail station to see some fast action on the main line. The Watercress Line, the Mid Hants Railway. Alton, west of London, on a London and South Western secondary line. It's 10 miles in length from the Alton British Rail Station. The stations are Medstead and Four Marks, Ropley, and Arlesford. Today was War on the Line Day, a recreation of the way it was, sort of, on a fall day in the early 1940s on a rail lines of southern England. Is our guard getting ready to do for some little switching out a passenger car. And our first view of the U.S. Baldwin-built Franklin Delano Roosevelt, lettered for the Longmoor Military Railway. The FDR was built in 1944, and, as I said, she was a Baldwin baby from Pennsylvania. This one, I believe, actually came from Poland or Greece. Absolutely beautifully maintained.
Sorry. Germans are very authoritarian.
No, don't worry, it's not real bomb damage. But they try and make it as reasonably accurate as possible. Fake soldiers, fake prisoners. Real Royal Mail vehicles. Our next locomotive is number 76017, a Class 4MT 260 built in 1953 for British Railways, has 68-inch drivers, and weighs 59.575 tons, built at Horwich. Department D601, the Sturdy. 210, built by North British in 1943 for the War Department. It's a sister to the Dame Vera Lynn at the North Yorkshire Moors Rwy. Here we are at Ropley, and viewing some of the privately owned Army vehicles. Here the Sturdy arrives at Medstead and Foremark Station. At Medstead and Foremarks Station, there is a vintage bus museum, and they hauled out a few of them to allow free rides on the double-deck buses.
There's nothing.